Hey everyone, this is Stephen Judge, clinical naturopath and nutritionist in Sydney, Australia, coming at you today from my home office and just doing some work from home. I just wanted to quickly make a video while this was on my mind because I was chatting to someone today about irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, and basically how, because they've struggled with this condition for quite a long time, and when I met this person, they said to me, oh, well, I've done everything I can. I've been to my GP, they've diagnosed me with IBS, they've excluded anything potentially more serious like inflammatory bowel disease or celiac disease. They'd gone to a dietitian, they had done a lot of their dietary advice and had experienced some relief in symptoms, but, pretty much still have pretty sluggish digestion every day, and nothing really has seemed to resolved incredibly. And so I kind of started asking them some questions. Well, what else have you done other than see the GP and made the dietary changes from the dietitian? And well, nothing really. I was asking them about, well, have you looked into the potential impact on your gut microbiome? Have you addressed dysbiosis, an imbalance of good and bad gut bacteria in the bowel? Has anyone ever talked to you about colonic inflammation? Has anyone ever addressed whether that's going on? So I just wanted to make, a video about naturopathically how we may approach treating IBS in a client a bit differently and looking at it a bit deeper compared to the perspective of a medical doctor or a dietitian, because of course we want to relieve symptoms, but we also want to get to the multiple underlying physiological reasons of why IBS has manifested and is persisting. So, I regularly meet clients, I meet family, I meet friends. So many people have gut issues these days. Many people are given the IBS label or kind of give it to themselves because they've got niggling gut issues going on, and they just have no idea what to do. They have no idea what to eat anymore. Everything triggers them. But so basically IBS, it's considered a functional disorder. So basically a condition where the normal functioning of the bowel is impaired, but there appears to be nothing grossly or physically wrong upon examination, like celiac disease or inflammatory bowel disease. So it can be frustrating for people because it's kind of this diagnosis of exclusion. Once other more serious conditions are excluded and ruled out, people are then given the IBS diagnosis if they have symptoms such as abdominal bloating and pain and relief from pain on defecation and moving your bowels. So it's this diagnosis of exclusion, and then, if you have a look on medical websites and the internet, it's basically labeled as something where treatment can help, but it can't be cured. It can't really be healed. You can be offered symptom relief, but nothing can really be done on a major scale, and there's no known cause. And I just personally think that's not good enough. There are treatments that go beyond symptom relief that can help your gut heal on a deeper level so that you can eat a much wider variety of foods in the future. I don't think it's good enough to say to people, well, you can take these medications. So people might be given drugs to relieve constipation. They might be given drugs to relieve diarrhea, depending on which way you go, or they might alternate for you. People might be given pain-relieving medications for abdominal cramping. Some people are even given antidepressants, not just for the pain, but because of the psychological effects that their digestive symptoms are having on them. So I just don't think this approach is good enough. So I just want to touch a bit quickly on naturopathically how we look at irritable bowel syndrome and, what exactly we can do and how we get to the underlying cause. So typically if you're diagnosed with IBS, your doctor and or dietitian and or nutritionist or naturopath will recommend to you to start a diet called the low FODMAP diet. So FODMAPs stands for fermentable oligodimonosaccharide and polyols, FODMAPs. So FODMAPs are short-chain carbs. They're short-chain carbohydrate-containing foods. So they're mostly found in plant foods, really healthy foods, a lot of fruit, vegetables, whole grains. And basically what happens is they're not completely broken down or absorbed properly in the bowel when you eat them. So this leads to excessive fermentation by bacteria, and then this leads to the diarrhea, the abdominal pain, the cramping, the gas. So people get put on this diet, and it has got a lot of research behind it. It is awesome for pretty quick symptom relief, particularly from the bloating and the gas and the pain. So it's a great intervention, particularly to begin with. But what you have to understand about FODMAP foods is that FODMAP foods are very high in fermentable fibers that feed our beneficial gut flora. So it's not an appropriate long-term intervention. So dietitians and nutritionists and naturopaths alike should be following a system with the FODMAP diet where come the 5-6 week mark of being on a low FODMAP diet, there should be a reintroduction phase of each of the different FODMAP food groups, to see which ones you are particularly reacting to. And so then from that point, you should know which FODMAP foods you are highly sensitive to and which ones you can tolerate. But then it kind of stops there. I meet people all the time who say, well, I've done the FODMAP thing. I react to most of them. I figured out a few of them I'm okay with, and that's basically all I've been told I can do. And again, I just personally don't think that's good enough. Where is the microbiome healing, and where's the addressing the dysbiosis, the underlying colonic inflammation, the underlying nerve receptor hypersensitivity? So one of the hallmark symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome is something called visceral hypersensitivity. So this is basically referring to pain in the viscera or the inner organs, and it describes the increase in the sensation of pain a lot more than normal within these organs. So there's got to be an underlying reason for this, and one of them is underlying colonic inflammation and nerve receptor hypersensitivity. So if we don't address this on a deeper level, other than simply removing FODMAP foods, it's not going to heal in the long term. So a lot of the pain that people experience, it's kind of like, someone with IBS they don't technically bloat a lot more than someone else, but because they're so sensitive and the nerve cells are so hypersensitive, they experience such more drastic pain. But the amount of bloating is technically similar. Some people may also have something called intestinal permeability, or in the blogosphere that's kind of popularly referred to as leaky gut. So it's due to long-term dysbiosis and imbalance of gut flora in the colon, which drives a lot of inflammation. So the gut wall, which should be rich with mucus and immune secreting chemicals called short-chain fatty acids, which are anti-inflammatory in the gut, these things can deplete and cause long-term damage and inflammation to the gut wall. And so then it can become permeable, so to speak. So food particles can leak into the bloodstream and drive inflammatory reactions in the body. And essentially this is how people also get food intolerances and allergies. So I just want to really quickly speak about how someone was sitting in front of me and said they had IBS and they'd done everything they could according to the doctor and the dietitian. Well, I just want to touch on, well, let's take it a bit deeper, and how would a naturopath approach it on a deeper level. So the first thing I'd want to address is the dysbiosis. So IBS patients typically have an imbalance of the good and bad gut flora in the colon, typically swaying in the way of the bad gut flora. So how do we correct dysbiosis? So probiotics are a really popular intervention. There are particular strains of probiotics that have proved particularly useful for IBS clients in terms of symptom relief, because some of them are anti-inflammatory. But to correct dysbiosis long term, we need to take it a step further than just taking probiotics, because to be able to proliferate new bugs, new beneficial bugs in the bowel in the long term, we need to actually feed the good bugs that we have left with prebiotics, because probiotics technically don't seed the gut. You don't take a probiotic and then you've got new bacteria in there. They kind of linger for a week or two and have their healing effect, and then they go. So probiotics are transient in that sense. The only way to grow and proliferate new bugs in the long term, which is essentially it's one of the most important things that we need to look at, you need to feed the gut with prebiotics. So the problem here is that a lot of prebiotic foods are very high FODMAP foods, such as legumes and beans and lentils, onion and garlic. So, I mean, anyone with IBS can tell you they can't go near these foods. It will set their symptoms off quite dramatically. So we're caught in this scenario of, well, we need prebiotics to heal the gut, but we can't eat prebiotic foods because they worsen our symptoms. So this is where you can actually get prebiotic, very specific prebiotic supplements that are low FODMAP and are non-gas forming and are very soothing to the gut. So one of them I recommend quite a lot to clients is something called partially hydrolyzed guar gum, or PHGG. So this is a prebiotic that's non-gas forming, it's low FODMAP, it helps to regulate the bowels, whether you sway towards having diarrhea or constipation. And yeah, so it goes in and it proliferates new bugs in the bowel, new good gut bacteria. So to address dysbiosis, yes, probiotics are important, but prebiotics are probably just as important, if not a lot more. So another treatment strategy that we want to look at a bit deeper from a naturopathic perspective is to address the low-grade intestinal inflammation that is occurring in the colon. So we're looking at particular herbal medicines like curcumin. So curcumin is the plant chemical from turmeric that gives it its anti-inflammatory activity. So I use a particular extract of curcumin called Mariva, and the Mariva curcumin basically has within this extract a phospholipid complex. So it's a specific kind of lipid, of fat, that enhances its absorption in the colon. Because if we don't address the low-grade intestinal inflammation and the damaged nerves which are driving pain in the colon, then in the long term, we have to heal that gut wall so that it can start secreting its immune anti-inflammatory chemicals again. And then together with having healthy gut flora, the gut can heal itself again and you can start to break food down again. And then in the long term, you should be able to eat a much wider variety of foods. So another thing we want to address on a much deeper level is stress, but I guess more specifically from a physiological perspective, we want to be supporting the adrenal glands, or the HPA axis, and the hypothalamic, pituitary, and adrenal axis. Because stress, I mean, anyone with IBS knows that stress is a huge driver of a worsening of their symptoms. So I've met quite a few people who have been told by their physician that they've got IBS, so there's, you know, technically physiologically nothing wrong with them on a gross level, and that it's just driven by stress and that they just need to manage their stress levels. So I don't agree with that. As I've just mentioned, there's quite a few things physiologically going on which are driving symptoms, and unfortunately these people are so sensitive. If they do get stressed or overloaded with stress, it does exacerbate the symptoms. So this is where natural medicine, again, can come in, and we have beautiful herbal medicine treatments that help to restore the adrenal glands and this HPA axis and reduce the effects of too much adrenaline and cortisol, these stress hormones. And so when this axis is just chronically elevated, particularly in people who have anxiety, the feedback system, the loop stops working and becomes irregulated, and these stress hormones just then begin to wreak havoc. And so when you've got elevated stress hormones, it basically sends a signal to the body that you're under threat. So it shunts blood away from organs that aren't necessary in the face of an immediate threat. So digestion's not important, sex is not important, for example, and it shunts blood away to the major organs and muscle groups so you can flee, basically. So when you're chronically having a stress response, the stress hormones stop the production of hydrochloric acid in the stomach so you can break down protein. They stop the production of digestive enzymes being made so that you can break down your food. And so again, food ends up getting to the bowel and becomes excessively fermented, on top of not being able to be broken down already because of the existing dysbiosis and inflammation. So they're kind of the three key major underlying things that we're looking at a bit deeper with the naturopathic approach to IBS. Of course, you want to give symptom relief, but I'd prefer people not to get symptom relief from anti-diarrheal drugs or drugs for constipation, because they're not treating the cause. You can get incredible symptom relief from herbal medicines, like whether they're in teas or herbal medicine tinctures are quite powerful. There is a product out there on the market that's been around for ages that even doctors will recommend called Iberogast. It's just a small drop dose liquid herbal formula that offers pretty much instant symptom relief. So we want symptom relief. We want to address dysbiosis. We want to address the imbalance of the good and bad bugs in the gut. We want to address the underlying colonic inflammation and the nerve receptor hypersensitivity. That is a key one. And we also want to be giving people adrenal support, stress support, HPA axis support. If you can work with a practitioner who knows precisely how to really dig into these three areas quite specifically, especially the dysbiotic gut microbiome stuff, this is like where we're truly getting to the underlying cause. I run a test. I get a lot of my gut clients to complete a stool analysis test by a company called Ubiome, and they basically, their test is the most accurate and most diverse in analyzing all the different levels of the good and the bad gut bacteria in the colon. And so when we get the analytes and the test results back, and which specific strains of bacteria are too high or too low, or in some cases non-existent, we can then get very targeted and specific with our prebiotic and probiotic therapies based on clinical research. And so that's it from me today. I hope that was useful for anyone watching the replay. Please feel free to drop me a comment if you have any further questions. Happy to take any further questions, or you can PM me as well. I might also, just before I go, I did write a nice blog article on IBS a month or two ago, that it kind of goes into some of the areas I just mentioned in a bit more detail, and and in the blog article there's also some links to some specific supplements to get you started on the way to not only symptom relief, but actually dealing with the root cause. So thanks for listening. If you're watching the replay, please comment and say hi, and I'll see you soon. Bye.